Welcome back everyone to the Hello World Guy, and this is the episode number 6 of the platformer series, and today we are going to implement the enemy movement and a health bar for our player. Now getting started with the player's health bar, that's the thing we are going to implement first. It's going to be really simple. So right click here, we have already got a UI grid here. So I'm going to just, no, this is not a UI grid, a canvas here. We have got a canvas here, and I can right click on this, go under UI and add in a image like we did in the last time. If you remember, the way we added the health bar is basically an image. We can call this like health bar. Okay, and then I'm going to move it to the this part here, and then I'm going to increase its decrease its width a bit, its height, something really smaller like 50, and width to something like 150, and move it on the X a little bit, maybe not 200. 200 is a bit better, and that's good, and make it like minus 25 or 30, 30, 40. Alright, I'll make it negative 40 on the Y, the position, and the X seems good right there, and the width is 200. Maybe the height should be a little less. 40 is fine. Yes, and maybe I will make this 35. Yeah, with that done, I'm going to, for the source image, I'm just going to select UI sprite, so that it has got some nice rounded corners and looks all good. So after doing that, I'm going to right click on this and go ahead and add in another image as a child of the health bar, main health bar image, and I'm going to make sure that it is stretched. Alright, and then I'm going to change its color to be green. Then I'm going to add a little bit of padding, 3 3 3 3. Oh, no, that's too less. 10. Let's try 10. Okay, 10 is a bit too much. I'm going to just make it 7, 7, 7, and 7. Alright, so now we are going to actually make it fill. So I'm going to go here and choose this to be UI sprite as well. Maybe 5 is enough actually for the padding. Alright, with that done, now I'm going to go under here and find its image type and change it from slice to fill. Now fill method, change that from radial to horizontal, and fill amount from right or left, I guess. And then we can, alright, you can see it's not working, and in order to make it work, if I change this to a square sprite, completely square, we haven't got any square in our in our game right now. So if I just remove this and search for square, then you can see we got square here. That works. So UI sprite won't work with this, I guess. And you can see this is the way it works right now. I actually want it to be filled from the right, I think, because not really left. Alright, so that works. We can just set this fill amount to represent our health. So now we need to code that behavior. Alright, to do that, I'm going to open up my player script and add in another public void here. So this is going to be a public void, and this is going to be on damage instead of on death. On damage. So this function will be called whenever we are damaged, and of course we will create an event for that. And whenever we are damaged, what we will do essentially is actually I want to change the death function a little bit. I'll just go ahead and say destroy game object, so that the player is destroyed when that happens. Anyways, getting back to the damage function, I'm going to for here, of course, we need a reference to our stuff, images and etc. And I'm going to remove the comments here, and here I'm going to have a reference. So we have already got a UI header here where it has a text, and I'm going to add in another CLI field here. This is going to be a private TM Pro, not really, image, but of course for that we will need to use Unity Engine using Unity Engine .ui. Alright, in here go private image called fill image, or just call it health fill image, and that's pretty good. And what we will do in the start method is we will go ahead and say fill health fill image dot fill amount is equal to 1, which means fully filled. And what we will do down here is we will say health fill image dot fill amount is equal to, now for that we will have to have a damageable is equal damageable is equal to get component damageable. All right, and here we will say damageable to dot health. Of course, currently our damageable script doesn't expose the health, so I will create a public uh, health. Actually, let me do it here. So just create a public float called health, and this is going to be have just a just I think get. Actually, what we can do is not make this like this. Instead, we don't really need that. We can actually just change the if I just go here and double hit Control R, you can see I can rename this. I can make the H capital, and then I can turn this into a property which has got a get, which is public. So this is by default a public property, a get which is public, and then a private set, which means that it can only be changed inside of here. So if I go under my player to CS and I try to say damageable dot health is equal to 1, then you can see it won't allow me to do that because its accessor is inaccessible. And in here we can just use damageable dot health divided by damageable not really we have got default health here, so that's a private float, and for that we are going to create a separate here called the default health, get return default health, and no set method. Okay, so I think I can just change this to like that, so that it's a bit more easier to understand, I think. So yeah, only get it is also read only, and this will allow us to you know, we have a percentage kind of thing here. So yeah, this code should basically work. So now I'm going to open up my damageable script and go ahead here, and actually I'm going to add another header for this. I think header events. This is going to be a header for events, and because we are adding a new event, so I'm going to just copy this line of code, add in another event, and call this on damage event. Okay, then what you can do is go under damage function, and after doing all of this, and we are not invoking in here, I can say on damage event, or just, you know, if just do it here on damage event dot invoke, and that should work. So the player is we have got a damage event, and we can hook up our on damage method to it. So if I go under and select my player, you can see we have got a this here on damage event, adding a new event here, add the player script. Oh, and I've already set the health fill image to the fill image, so do that as well. And then just go under damageable and hit no, it's damageable actually, just go under player I guess, and try to find the on damage function, and yes, and just this fill image, drag that to their you know, in here health fill image. So after you have done that, this should hopefully start to function. If I go near him, you can see that my health is decreasing after every little amount of time until you know, the player died function is called. Now, of course, the problem is that you can see that it's saying player died again and again and again. I only want this to be actually called once. So I'm going to go here, and if the player is dead, so I'm going to just say if health is less than or equal to 0, return. We don't want to execute this method anymore. Alright, so yeah, that should work. So that's alright, and our health bar is now completely functional. Alright, so now we are going to add the actual movement for our enemy, and for that I have opened the enemy script, and you can see I've added a header before, you know, we have got our CLI fields here saying attacking, because these are related to attacking, and after that I will add in a space, and then I will add in yet another header, and this will be for the movement, and then here I will have a serialize field, a private float called speed, float called speed is equal to something like 6 I guess, and then we will have a serialize field. This is going to be a private transform called path start I guess, maybe not. All right, call, okay, we're going to say point 1. This is going to be our move point 1, and then we are going to add yet another one. This is going to be our point 2. So we will basically move from point where we are currently at the start to point 1, then to point 2, and that. And we will of course have an int here called target, which will be 0 by default, and this will represent which so if 0 we are moving towards point 1, if it's 1 we are moving towards point 2. So yeah, that's done, and now we can start programming the actual movement logic inside of our update method. So for the movement, first of all, just so we don't have to write if statements and choosing between point 1 or point 2 based on this target variable, I'm going to create a private transform array here called points, and that is going to be equal to a new transform of 2 elements, and in here we are going to say points is equal to, can I do this? Okay, I cannot new transform 2. All right, so this is going to be like that, and for the initializer's length, I'm going to give it the first element of point 1, and the second element is going to be point 2. That's it. And this is going to initialize our array to have point 1 and point 2, and in here we can just choose a transform called point, or just point is equal to points target. All right, so that's it. We have chosen our point, and now we need to move towards that point. So in order to do that, it's actually really simple. So here I have done it already with this new code, and just in order to do that, you just need to create a float called move, and you need to check if the point that we selected position dot x, so its x position is less than the transform dot position dot x, and if it is, then we set the move to be -1, which means it's to the left, therefore we need to move to the left, which is -1, and if not the case, then we set it to +1. This is of course not completely working, but it's a good starting point. And then we use transform dot translate here with a new vector3, new vector3 as an argument, which this translate method, by the way, just changes the position, adds this value to the position. So vector3, and it has contains a move which multiplied by speed multiplied by time, the delta time. So of course we need to multiply this because we want this to be frame rate independent, and multiplied by speed and move, of course, so that it's moving in the right direction and at the right speed. And for the y, just make it 0. We do not want any vertical movement, as I said before. So if I play now, of course that won't work. Actually, wait a second. Before you play, I have already gone ahead and added a empty game object here called enemy point. Make sure it's at 0 0, and I have added a couple of points here. One is named after enemy 1 and the other after enemy 2. The reason I have named it this is so that we are easier to understand. So enemy 1.1 and enemy 1.2, and we can increase that for any more enemies. Maybe we might name this to enemy 1 as well. So yeah, that should work. So if I have just gone and in enemy script and added point 1 as enemy 1 and point 2 as enemy 1.2, these objects. And after doing that, if I hit play, then you should see that the enemy indeed moved towards the first point. And as you can see, he's moving, and then he stops as soon as he reaches, and then he is kind of trying to move left, but then he starts to move right again. Of course, we want to change the target now. So yeah, how can we actually accomplish that? Of course, in order to do that, actually it's not that difficult. All we need to do is change these if statements a little bit. So now what we need to do is basically add another if statement here, and I'm just going to copy all of that, I guess, and just paste it here, and make sure that it is greater now, and then we set the move to 1 if it is greater. Now else it means that it's obviously equal. Then we just set target is equal to and we set it, we will use the ternary operator here. If the target is equal to 0, then we will set it to 1, else we will set it to 0. So yeah, this should work. Now of course it's saying that move might not be initialized. It will be initialized. So if this is the case, which means we have set our target to a new variable, then we will just go ahead and actually this problem can be fixed easily. Just make sure that in the start move is 0.0. All right, so that should work, and we are basically checking if the target is 0. We just change the target to whatever it is not. Actually, it made more sense to have it as a bool. Maybe we will change that. Alright, so let's just change it. This makes actually no, of course not. We are using it as a subscript. We cannot change it to a bool. Alright, so that works now, and if I hit play, then you should see that it's working. So the person should the enemy should start coming towards here, and then it actually doesn't work. Seems like so you can see it's not kind of working. If I go back in Visual Studio, you can see that we are setting our target to a different value. If our target is equal to 0, we are setting it to 1, and else we are setting it to 0. But this is still not working for some reason. So why is it not working? How can we fix it? So the reason it was not working is that when we were doing it, we were basically being dependent. If I just get my code back to where it was originally, so that I can just show you in a little bit more detail, this is basically what we had. So we are checking if it's exactly equal to the point position, only then we revert the position. But the truth is that it never actually gets exactly equal to the point position. So we need to have some kind of threshold, a little bit of that kind of thing for this to work. So for that, I'm going to get this here, and then I am going to add in a block of code here. Then I'm going to just select this and use Alt to move it up, because that's a really nice shortcut in Visual Studio, and then use Tab to indent it as well. Then this is going to be in an else block, and of course the if currently doesn't exist. For the if, you need to use the mathf.abs function to get the absolute value, and the value we are going to give it is going to be point dot position dot x minus transform dot position dot x. The reason we use abs here is so that it's not, you know, if it's negative, it's on the other side, then it doesn't cause any error. So anyways, what we do is we check if it's basically we check if the distance between the point and this, we only use the x, of course, because we don't care about vertical movement. So if the distance is less than a particular value, like 1.1, let's say, or let's just say 0.2, if it's less than that, then we can actually reverse our position. So target is equal to whether target is equal to 0, then 1, or else 0. So yeah, that's going to be really nice, and it should actually work this time, because we have got a slight threshold now. We might need to increase or decrease it later, but let's just try testing. And as soon as the game starts, you should see that the opossum is currently, it reaches here and then it goes back. That's really awesome. And of course he can still damage us, as you can see, and he of course changes the direction correctly, and he also pushes us kind of. So yeah, this is all really nice. So now one obvious problem that we would like to see is that he's currently not facing the direction he's moving. So yeah, that's a problem, and apart from that, everything else is working. Alright, so in order to do that, all we need to do is it's really simple. We are just going to use our play. We can just jump in our player.cs here, and go here, where we actually flip this character. Yeah, that's exactly the code that we need. So I'm just going to copy it from here and paste it in the enemy class. Maybe we will do it after translating, maybe before translating. So if the move is greater than 0 and the local scale is less than 0, then we set it to this way. So yeah, that should work. So if so it's basically, you know, like what we do for the player. So if I just and you can see it's not working, because currently, of course, if I just hit play again, then this will start to work. Okay, you can see that it's working, but it's actually working wrong, because he's kind of going in the opposite direction of what he's supposed to go. So if the move is greater than 0, and this, then we multiply it by -1, that's all good. But if I actually go under here and select my enemy, then you can see that his scale, the scale of the enemy, is actually, well, it's positive. So yeah, that shouldn't really cause a problem. -1, like this. So if I start hit play, then you can see that oh, of course it's causing a problem, because in the player we had kind of the opposite way. Things were not, you know, in the correct way, because the player is by default moving towards the right, while this opossum is by default moving towards the left. So if I just change it to be have a scale of -1, then that should work. We just want him to be facing towards the right. So now play, and oh, it's still not working. Great. If I go under Visual Studio now, you can see that what we are doing is checking if move is greater than 0, and our trans we actually need to change this. We need to change this to less and change this to greater. Okay. That I think makes sense, because of course in the opossum is by default facing the wrong direction, so that's the reason we are changing it like that. So if I hit play now, hopefully this will work. Yeah, and now it's working. One thing is that it's currently a bit too small for the animation, slow for the animation. I'm going to increase this to 7, and I'm going to go under animation, and I'm going to actually select all of these frames, and I'm going to make it like a little larger, uh, around 10 frames. So yeah, it's currently got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames. So if I just change it to have like 12, maybe 10, 11, 12, that should work. Yeah, that's a bit too slow. Maybe make it 8 frames, that should work fine. So if I hit play now, you should see that the animation is kind of in sync with the actual speed. So yeah, that looks really awesome. So yeah, now we have got a pretty much working enemy that can damage us, and goes according to a path, runs according to a path that we tell it. So of course, in the next video we will start by creating a proper gravity system, and then maybe give the player the ability to damage the enemy. So I will see you in the next video, and stay tuned for that. Like and subscribe, and bye.